Ready, set, go. The question, first off, is considering the period from 1933 to 1945, analyze the economic, diplomatic, and military reasons for Germany's defeat in the Second World War. Well then, Germany's defeat in World War II was due to the economic, diplomatic, and militaristic problems during the period of 1933 to 1945. In the economic aspect, the Germans did not possess an industrial capacity as great as the Allied forces. On the diplomatic side, the Germans' allies proved to be a liability, and a grand alliance was just too overwhelming for the Germans. On the militaristic front, the Germans outstretched themselves and lost major battles. Germany's defeat in World War II on the economic level was that they did not possess the industrial capacity as great as the Allies. The U.S. produced more than all the Axis powers combined. The Allies bombed German factories strategic bombing in the cities compared to German saturated bombing of just dropping bombs, which did not cripple the production queue. The Germans were also using slave labor such as the Slavs, Jews, POWs, etc. compared to the Allied powers who had people in the factories working harder to win the war, which are more motivated and had a higher morale. A great deal of economic energy was spent on the final solution and elimination of Jews, with money being spent to eliminate Jews instead of the war effort. Germany did not shift its economy to total war until 1943, which was just too late, and the Germans were already being severely outproduced by the Allied forces. Germany's defeat in World War II was caused by economic problems, but also by the diplomatic ones. Germany's defeat in World War II on the diplomatic side was that their allies proved to be a liability, and the Grand Alliance was just too overwhelming. Germany formed an alliance with Italy in the Rome-Berlin axis, which brought Fascist Italy and Germany together, but later Italy would prove to be a liability. Italy's failures in Greece and Yugoslavia drew Germany into the Balkans, when it should have focused on the Mediterranean, showing how Italians were a liability. German forces had to take control of Italy after the Allies began penetrating up the peninsula, showing how the Italians were a liability. Japan attacked the U.S. at Pearl Harbor, and because the Germans had signed the Tripartite Act of 1940 adding Japan to the Rome-Berlin axis, the Germans drew into a war against the U.S. to help their ally. The Grand Alliance continued to contain the U.S., Britain, Russia, and over 40 other countries, which is much larger than the Axis powers. The Allies worked toward a means of unconditional surrender for Germany too, and came up with this at the Casablanca Conference. Overall, the diplomatic problems were not the only cause for Germany's demise, but also the military failures. Germany's defeat in World War II on the militaristic aspect was due to their army being outstretched and Germany being defeated in major battles. Germany lost the Battle of Berlin by doing a fatal error by bombing London in the Blitz, which allowed the RAF, or Air Force, to recover and defeat the Luftwaffe. During the Battle of Britain, Hitler lost 2,433 planes compared to Royal Air Force's 900, and now that the Hitler turned away from Britain, he would be faced with D-Day in 1944. Germany broke the German-Soviet non-aggression pact, or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and invaded the USSR, which would prove to be a blunder later on by creating a two-front war. The scorched earth policy that the Soviets instituted weakened the Nazi army by depriving the German army of resources. Underground movements sabotaged Nazi supply depots, derailed trains, blew up bridges during the war. Erwin Rommel, or known as the Desert Fox, and the Nazi forces were driven out of Egypt by Bernard Montgomery during Operation Torch, which then opened the door for the invasion of Italy in July 1943 and caused Hitler to face a three-front war. Hitler lost the Battle of Stalingrad, which began the 2.5-year push back by the Soviets back to Berlin. Then D-Day, or Operation Overlord, the Allies launched an amphibious invasion on the beaches of Normandy, which created a western front for the Allied forces and began pushing toward the German border, which spelled the end of Nazi domination of Europe. The USSR was pushing toward Germany from the east, the Americans and English were coming from France, and Allied forces were advancing from Italy. Basically, it was a three-front war. During the battle, the bold Hitler sent his last offensive drive against the Allies, but he failed. The Germans also began running out of soldiers during the war and had to rely on children and old men near the end of the war, because the rest of them were basically dead. Germany's army was outstretched during the war and had to fight a three-front war in the end. Germany's demise in World War II was also caused by their militaristic failures. Germany during the period of 1933 and 1945 was defeated due to their economic problems, diplomatic relations, and militaristic failures. And that is why Germany lost World War II. Thank you for listening, and hope this helps.